So when I'm talking with someone in this way, my perception, at least, is every single thing you say is sort of a clue in a way, or it's an opening point. So I kind of, if I have time, like I do now, I'll address multiple parts of it. But the very first thing you said was it's kind of embarrassing to ask because I've written so much and I've put so many videos out and I have put a lot of content out. But the interesting thing that I want to relate to you about that is, to me, I don't even know what that shit says. I don't even know what my book says. Like I could think back on it, but it's nothing sacred. It's not maybe it can facilitate someone finding their own way back to their own sacred reality, but it's not, there's nothing special about that book or anything I've ever done from this perspective, because this perspective is no particular perspective. Doesn't mean it's nothing, and it's not nothingness, and it's not blackness, but it's so alive. It's so these words like the unborn, unconditioned are so true, because all they can say is what it isn't, but it is a heck of a lot of something. And this living reality is so potent and so alive that it just doesn't have to reference anything, especially a past or most importantly, a base of knowledge, a base of understanding, anything that's been written in the past, to me, is burned up the moment it's written, in a sense. So so there are good pointers out there, far beyond myself. There's great pointers by many people, many teachers, many non-teachers, who've written their personal stuff, who've written poetry, who've written incredibly detailed maps of this process, right? There's tons of that stuff out there. Some of it's really good, some of it's a little muddy, whatever, some of it's bad, but there's a lot out there. And it has value. To me, it has value. I like it. I refer people to other resources a lot and things like that. With that said, what the real teaching, the real pointing, just doesn't have to do with that. It has to do with right now. That's the beauty of this. And so any pointer, anything I say, any sentence I wrote, people will often cut and paste a sentence, send it back to me from one of my paragraphs and say, this changed everything for me. Like, this was the turning word, this, for whatever reason, this paragraph, this sentence. And to me, that's like, oh, that's great. I'm glad that did that. But there's nothing special about that. What was special was the timing. What's special is the synchronicity. There's like I could spiritualize it and say there's a divine timing, but actually the truth of it is your experience right now, what you're perceiving as consciousness before you perceive it as consciousness, is actually a conduit to everything that ever was. That's what you are. That's what you're experiencing right now. Everyone here is experiencing that, whether they know it or not. What's interesting is the mind tries to package it, in a sense, into something usable for what it thinks it is, which is a small self or a separate self. So you have access to tremendous amounts of whatever you want to call it, energy, potential, all of it, right? Not just access, it's there. It's the living truth of this moment, right? And it's not bound by a sense of you necessarily. In fact, the sense of you is sort of a filter for it, but it has a certain synchronicity to it. So things line up a certain way at a certain time. So I could say the same words 5 minutes from now and they wouldn't be necessarily appropriate, right? So much of this whole thing is about timing and synchronicity, right? Now, the reason I'm saying all this is so you really let it sink in that the only place you're going to find the truth about how that synchronicity is lining up and what's working at this moment and what might not be appropriate, what needs to be let go of, is only in you, actually. And you, and you, and you, and you, not me, right? For me, it's me, let's say. So again, as I do so frequently, I try to point people back to their own deep intuition. And this goes to the next point of what you said. Your intuition is what led you from 50 years of being identified as a seeker or interested in spirituality to going, well, wait a minute, this stuff they're talking about, like Buddha was talking about, like, Dogen was, whoever, that they're saying I can do that. Like, seriously, I can actually do that. Yes. And that transition from just being peripherally interested in spirituality, which is that's increasing dramatically in the world, and it's great. But it's kind of like a pre-step to the actual awakening process. It's just becoming interested in consciousness or something beyond the gross material way we look at things. But the real step is when you suddenly instinctually feel like, oh, it's like it's simultaneously amazing and terrifying, right? But part of us don't, whether they know it or knows it or not, it's kind of like, holy shit, what would that actually mean though? What would it mean if I step outside of self? What would it mean to be so merged into everything there's no personal experience anymore? How, I can't even imagine what that would be like. You can't imagine what that would be, and you can't. It's impossible. I can't imagine what that would be like. It's not imaginable. That really puts the mind on tilt.